So we really appreciate you all being here. It's been a really busy day. Excited to meet a lot of you that we've met so far and looking forward to meeting many more. So without further ado, though, I'd like to call up our first ecosystem spotlight, Jaeson Ma, who is the founder and leader of the Open, OP3N. Jaeson is a great partner of ours. I'm really excited for what he's building with Open. So I'll turn the stage over to Jaeson. Jaeson, welcome up, and look forward to hearing from you.
So I just want to use a clicker. All right, what's going on, Avalanche family? I just want to take this moment to thank God for the greatest invention on earth, air conditioning. I was like turning into a grilled cheese sandwich outside, waiting outside for the taco truck. With all that being said, my name is Jaeson Ma. I'm co-founder of Open, OP3N. We're a launchpad for IP and communities, working strategically with Avalanche and their ecosystem, and want to talk about our Culture Catalyst Initiative Fund today and what we're doing with the Avalanche ecosystem. Before I get into that, just a little bit about why Web3, why Open, why we are what we are and what we're doing. So I'm just going to go here, turning creators into communities in Web3. And why we believe in Web3 and why crypto is important. I know you guys heard this multiple times, 100 times. I come from the media entertainment industry, 20 years. My mission has been to bridge East and West through media, entertainment, and technology, through stories and IP. And traditionally in Web 1, where you could actually read, meaning you get information, whether that's from Netscape, Yahoo, or Google, that was the first iteration of the internet as we knew it. Web 2, you could read and write, which means you not only were able to receive information and data, but you're actually able to publish information and data yourself, hence Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, on and on. Push a button, you get a car, Uber, Lyft. But the reality is, in Web 2, and for me as an IP holder, an IP creator, an IP developer, is that all the value accrued to only a few tech giants in Web 2's ecosystem, which we call FANG. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. And these new pharaohs, whether they were Zuckerberg or they were Ted Sarandos or whether they were, the founder of TikTok, all that value, meaning trillions of dollars of value, went to a few, and the ones that actually created that value didn't get much. And what excites me about Web3 and why crypto is important is that in Web3, you can not just read and write, you can actually own your digital assets. You can own your ideas. You can own your human sovereignty. And you can be direct with your community that loves those ideas with that smart contract that disintermediates that middle layer of Web 2 tech giants that own everything currently, as we understand right now. So that unlock for me was absolutely why I am doing what I am at Open. So with that being said, as you guys understand, getting into Web3, the journey is fraught with just a lot of friction. It's clunky. So you look at it and scams in the decentralized crypto space. You saw Bored Ape Yacht Club getting hacked on Discord just last week. It's slow, it's expensive just to mint, and environmentally unfriendly, which is why we're working with Avalanche, because they solve every single one of these issues, from security to being eco-friendly to be effectively and efficiently one of the fastest blockchains, if not the fastest blockchain in the ecosystem of Web3 today. So how does this impact the user? So what ultimately matters to the user is that users don't necessarily care about the blockchain. They really just value a smooth experience that improves their lives. And I know this firsthand. I was an early investor in Musical.ly, which then became TikTok and got acquired by ByteDance. And when you first used Musical.ly, it was just like, it's this awesome mobile karaoke machine. And don't ask me how or why the story, but the way I actually got investment in the company in 2016, don't ask me why, I was with Paris Hilton in Shanghai. And I told Paris, there's this new amazing app, you gotta go check it out. And she was like, what is it? And I showed it to her, she's like, whoa, this is cool. And we walked into the Shanghai office, and I remember Musical.ly is actually a Chinese company, and there's 40 Chinese devs there. And when they see this Paris Hilton, tall blonde, walking through the room, and they showed her the tech, and she used it, and she made her first Musical.ly. It happened within less than 60 seconds. It was easy, it was simple, it was user-friendly, and immediately she got it, and we were the first ones to live stream in Macau, her DJ set, and later on we put Ariana Grande, and then from there, literally within 18 months, it got acquired by ByteDance, but now as we know it, over 1 billion users on TikTok. How is that actually gonna happen in Web3? And I think that's what we're trying to figure out here, is how do we get out of this consensus swamp? Again, this is a good swamp to have, right? But how do we get from crypto communities and crypto culture and Web3 culture and degens into the mainstream, into the mass market? This is why we built Open. So what we're doing at Open is we're a platform and a Web3 super app that puts all the needs and wants of a Web3 user first and funnels them into an easy-to-use chat interface. Think of us as like a Web3 WeChat, a Web3 Facebook, an NFT-gated Discord, but more secure, more fast, and more native to Web3 tooling. So this is the actual platform, and here's a little video to show you a sneak peek of what we've built and what's in the iOS store right now.
We've become more open than ever. With online communities that transcend earthly borders, the future of storytelling is on the web. The Open app brings you unparalleled access to immersive story experiences, gated by culturally relevant NFTs. This is worldwide entertainment with you at the center. Now, you can enjoy exclusive video, music, announcements, and invitations from communities across the globe. The time has come to embrace an open world.
So you can actually download OP3N on iOS right now, Android coming out in a month. You can also go to the desktop website, open.world, op3n.world, and you're going to be able to experience communities native in Web3 and be able to access all these different functionalities that you see on this diagram here. So think of us as this Web3 super app. We're strategically partnered with Avalanche for the Culture Catalyst Initiative, and when you actually buy an NFT, we consider it like a Willy Wonka golden ticket into different Willy Wonka worlds. And the NFT is this membership card that gives you access into music. We have a music player, NFT gated. We have a video player, NFT gated. Discovery, NFT gated. We have XR, AR, and VR experiences, NFT gated. We have a creator portal where you can actually manage all of your NFTs. You can create generative collections. You can go and create DAO tooling, manage your treasury, snapshot type of functionalities where you can vote, you can apply, the community comes in and approves or disapproves, and a social marketplace that's coming. So think of this as crypto chat for communities. We're integrating some of the best features of successful Web 2 platforms into one dynamic user-friendly app that is Web3 native through the smart contract. So think of decentralized IDs as your identity, that your new email address is your wallet address. And that's how you log in, and that's how we know who you are. Blockchain secure chat. I'd say a lot of the times, like, why did you download Signal 5 years ago? The only reason why we downloaded Signal is because someone told me this is crypto secure chat. And at the time, I was like, well, that makes sense. WhatsApp's controlled by Zuckerberg, and WeChat's controlled by Xi Jinping, and Telegram's probably by the Russian mob or someone. And at that time, I downloaded not because the UI UX was better. It was just that it had tooling for a specific use case that I wanted. And that's what we built at Open. We built a Web3 chat platform where basically it's NFT gated and it's native with the tooling of Web3. So where everyone else is building horizontally, we're building vertically. I learned this from my time in Asia, just having experiences with apps and super apps like Kakao, like Line, like WeChat, and seeing that that's actually necessary and needed right now here in Web3 in our community. So let's ask this question, Web 2 to Web 3. Everyone's Web 3. How? And when I was talking to John Nahas, I was talking to John Wu, I was talking to Devin, and they were the ones that truly first got culture. And they said, Jason, everyone in Web 3 is figuring out how are you going to get 1 billion in Web 2 into Web 3? And my answer to them from an entertainment media background was it's only going to happen through 3 ways: movies, music, and sports. You could also add lifestyle, you could add culture, but there's a reason why Crypto.com is plastered over USC, over the LA Staples Center, which is now Crypto Arena, why there's FTX Arena in Miami, why they're at the F1 races. Why is this all happening? Because culture moves, or the masses move at the speed of culture. So the next 2 billion, or the next billion, from Web 2 to Web 3 is not going to happen just through DeFi, but it's going to happen through culture. And the people at Avalanche, the team at Avalanche, truly understood this and got this. And I was like, yo, you guys are people. And so we started the Culture Catalyst Initiative. And we're very, very excited. We announced this in Barcelona. And what is it exactly? The Culture Catalyst Initiative is Open and Avalanche, our platform with the Avalanche blockchain, announcing a $100 million Culture Catalyst Initiative fund committed to finance NFT projects in culture and entertainment to build on Avalanche and launch on Open exclusively. And you ask why? Who are we going to do this with? Well, filmmakers, musicians, athletes, game developers, and artists and designers. Bigger question to me is why? I met with a TikToker recently at NFT Art Basel, Miami, And she has about 300,000 to 400,000 followers on TikTok. She was signed to a major music label at Universal. And she had a song go on TikTok viral with over 1 billion views. And she looked me dead in the eyes and she said, I just got dropped from the label. I have 1 billion views on this video. I haven't seen $1,000 from TikTok. She goes, I don't even know how to talk to my fans. And I know they're right there. There's 300,000 of them. I don't even know how to communicate. When I showed her Open and I told her that Avalanche is eco-sustainable, that it's faster, and it's safer, and it's more secure, she literally looked at me and said, so you built a music label and like Netflix on my phone in my pocket? And she's like, where do I sign up? And so immediately what she began to realize was that the technology that we have in Web3 can actually solve these unfair issues in Web 2 for the artists. And so what we're coming to filmmakers and musicians are, like Grimes, our first announcement. This is the project that we announced in Barcelona. It's Project Grimes, an intergalactic children's metaverse book and music video in Web3. The reason why we chose this one was simply because Grimes has already launched an NFT project in Web3 successfully, making over $6 million on an NFT drop. But more so, she actually cares about the environment. She cares about security. She understands the Web3 development community as an artist, and she's deep in it herself as a DGen. So we knew who better than to do it with her. We launched her intergalactic metaverse book and video this coming fall. Get ready for it. The next one was Ava Max from Warner Music Group. She wants to create an Ava Nation, potentially community, super fan club. What's that going to look like on Avalanche and Open? We want to bring purpose. So we want to build fandom for Ava Max on Web3 by utilizing Open's versatile platform as a premier social hub for all engagement. So everything from NFT-gated ticketing, NFT-gated merch, NFT-gated music videos, secret content, exclusive experience, front row seats, all this for her super fans. We're not going for her 10 million fans. We're going for that 10,000 fan base that understands Web3, that wants that access and will do anything it takes to support Ava Max. So how does this actually work? And this is where I'm going to actually close and break this whole thing down. So how many of you guys are excited, it's probably because you're here, about Avalanche and the future of Avalanche? Raise your hand. All right. I truly believe that Avalanche, this is just the beginning. I'm super excited personally about Avalanche because I look at a lot of the other chains and I look at them as monolithic, meaning they're super centralized. When I look at Avalanche, it's really a modular chain that is truly decentralized and native to Web3. And when I explain this to artists, they're like, wait a second, that makes sense. I'm like, you can actually have your own chain through the validator network. And when I explain to them what we're doing, it's the opposite of Netflix. So give you guys an example. When Netflix did Squid Games, it made $1 billion in new subscriptions. How much do you think the director got paid? $250K. Number two, he owns 0 of the Squid Game IP. So Netflix pays you in Web 2, and they keep your IP. With the Culture Catalyst initiative, with Avalanche and Open, we pay you as an IP holder, and you keep the IP. That's the difference with what we're doing here. So how does it actually work? $100 million. Imagine that we have an artist. I'm just going to use Drake for an example. He does 10 million on the drop, and this is how the waterfall works. The first 10% goes to Open as a platform for our tech fee. Again, Spotify charges 70%, YouTube charges 50%, we charge 10%. So that first 1 million comes down to Open. Step 2, Culture Catalyst Initiative investment recoups with a 50% premium of the initial investment to cover overhead costs, meaning we're not a traditional 20 fund, we're not getting management fees. All the investment and all the production we put in, there's a bit of interest, so the next million plus 15% gets paid back to Avalanche Foundation. And then let's just say there's 8 million or so net profit. We split that, number 3, half and half with the creator. So if that was Drake, he gets 4 million, we get 4 million. We keep investing in more culturally relevant projects to get $1 billion in Web 2 to Web 3, and Drake is happy. He's with 4 million found money. Now here's the kicker, guys. If the NFT drop fails, and he makes not 8 million or 10 million, but he makes 80,000, we shelved out $1 million, we take on that risk. The creator doesn't owe us that capital. So it's not like a traditional loan. It really is almost like a grant, so we can get the next wave of music and movie and sports and lifestyle and culture into Web3 on Avalanche and launch exclusively through Open. The key thing is this. We believe that Web3 is about self-ownership of IP. Creators own the IP, not the fund, period. And this is what we're about. And thank you, and I hope you're excited about Culture Cast Initiative. Please talk to me afterwards. DM me at Twitter, at Jaeson Ma. Got it.
Let's give Jason another round of applause, guys. That was a great presentation. Jason, if I ever need to take a break, by all means, hop up here, man. Take over. You're the man. Thank you very much. Really excited about what Jason and Open are doing. So encourage you all to take a look at that once we're up and going. I'd like to invite Chirag Dhull up next from Chainlink Labs. Can you get a round of applause, please? Sure. Do you need this?
Yes, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone. How are y'all doing? It's great to be back at an in-person consensus again. We have been working with the Avalanche team for a very, very long time. It's always exciting to come and talk to the ecosystem and the folks in person. So I'm excited about what we're going to cover in the next 15 or so minutes that we have today. A little bit about myself and how I got here. So I've spent about 10, 12 years in the developer tooling and data space, working at AWS and Microsoft. The last product I built with Amazon was Amazon's managed blockchain service. And immediately I knew I have to jump full heads-on into the space. So I've been with Chainlink Labs for more than a year now, leading their product marketing space. In the presentation today, we are going to talk about a little bit of a business update on where we are with the Avalanche so far. We've been working with them for a very long time, so we're going to share some data and stats and the momentum and growth. And then, very excited to talk about a few of the new capabilities that we're bringing to the Avalanche developer community starting this week. All right. So Chainlink Labs, our vision is to build a world powered by truth. Now, I'm preaching to the choir here. Jason also spoke a little bit about it, that the existing relationship we have with institutions today is brand-based. It's essentially a paper promise required to trust that the organization will do the right thing based on their brand and reputation. And we have seen that over time and time and time again, Enron, Lehman Brothers, so on and so forth, that there is a lot of counterparty risk associated with that. The probability that an organization, especially when the going gets tough, will not default on its contractual obligations is not zero. So the thing that truly excites me about the blockchain space, there are a lot of great qualities about how the blockchain technology provides value, but truly the real value proposition that struck me, and I believe it struck a lot of you as well, is the way to get cryptographic truth via math-based agreements. Now, in a very simple way, cryptographic truth-based capability is something that we would define as kind of a system of record which is very transparent, which is auditable, and most importantly, which is tamper-proof, much more than current existing alternatives that are available today. So we want to provide Web3 developers with the tools and services that will empower them to build services and apps and projects which are powered by cryptographic truth. And of course, we cannot do this alone. We have to do it with the ecosystem, with the technologies that developers are using today, with the partners such as Avalanche, which we are truly grateful to work with. Now, since launching price feeds, Chainlink has expanded to a lot of different trust minimized services that are fueling the smart contract innovation in DeFi as well as beyond DeFi in different use cases. So services such as verifiable randomness for NFT and gaming, keepers for smart contract automation, and I'll cover a few of these today as well. I'll go deeper into them. Proof of reserve for automated audits of cross-chain and real-world tokens and assets. Off-chain data, which is beyond just price feeds. So that could be weather data, sports data, so on and so forth. And look, we're not going to stop here today because it's not a level playing field. The kind of tools and technologies that the Web2 developers have, we want to bring them to Web3. We want to continue to innovate on behalf of the users and the projects and the developers that we keep hearing from on the kind of capability that they want to see in Web3, because that is only when we will build a world powered by cryptographic truth. So a quick slide on Chainlink's momentum and where we have come to date. Chainlink the first ETH USD price feed on Chainlink launched back in May 30, 2019, with 3 oracles backing that. In 3 years, we now have over about 1,000 price feeds, which are powered by about 1,000 independent decentralized oracle networks across 12 blockchains and layer 2 solutions, which is helping secure tens of billions of dollars of TVL, with about 3 billion data points that have been put on chain. So just wanted to take a moment here that, thanks to the ecosystem, the partners, the community, that we have come a long way. And a lot of that growth till now has been fueled by price feeds. Price feeds themselves are kind of being touted as the backbone of the DeFi system, thanks to their design, which is transparent, resilient, as well as its 3-tier architecture, which really provides, aggregates data from a bunch of different data providers, leverages the reputable node operators who aggregate the data, and then puts that data on a variety of different chains. Talking about price feeds on Avalanche, we have been working with the Avalanche team for a very long time, so I wanted to share some proof points here with you. There are about 48 price feeds available on Avalanche, where we have had about 8 million calls for those price feeds, with about 220 unique callers. And projects such as Aave, Benki, Trader Joe's, Krabada, CryptoBlades, and many, many more are using and leveraging price feeds to innovate on the Avalanche ecosystem. All right, moving on. Let's talk about other technologies and services that we are very, very excited to bring on Avalanche starting this week. So about 3/4 of all developers, it's not just Web3, it's Web2 as well, believe that automation is key. Automation is the future. Every and any project we talk to, the biggest thing they say is, hey, help me hire more developers, because that's where the real shortage is. And I'm sure many of you would agree with that. So how could we make the life of developers easier, more productive, so that they can do more with less? And in the Web2 space, technologies such as automation have been available for a very long time. You talk to any big CIO, CTO at a bank, they will tell you that all the different kind of technologies that they use today. So we are really excited to bring Chainlink Keepers, which is a decentralized automation service, to Avalanche starting this week. With Keepers, developers can now do highly secure DevOps tasks. They can automate a lot of those workloads. They can bring new user experiences to their users. And they can also do kind of advanced computation, leveraging the service itself. With Keepers, now developers can set up different kind of automation triggers and jobs for essentially time and schedule-based jobs, such as if you want a certain job to run at 3 p.m. every day, a custom computation, leveraging data from a Chainlink Oracle, and doing some computation around that. Benefit of Keepers really is that small developer teams on the Avalanche ecosystem now, they can do a lot more. They can outsource a lot of their menial small jobs to the Keepers automation bots, and then they can spend their time on continuing to improve the products and services that they're building and bringing to the ecosystem. Now, folks used to do this before. They used to use centralized servers. They used to spend a lot of time in manual automation aspects and jobs. And those things were taking a lot of their time. They were very, very insecure, in the sense that they had vulnerabilities in them. So we are getting a lot of positive feedback from developers about the service. Now, really quickly, how does this work? So Keepers leverages the same decentralized Oracle network that price feeds use. Developers can set up a condition which is called an upkeep. And once that condition is set up and defined by the developer, there's a simulation that continues to run off-chain using the Oracle network. Now, this does not use any on-chain gas fees, et cetera, whatsoever. So it is very, very gas efficient. And only when the condition is met, that's when the Keepers trigger the on-chain smart contract logic to work on your behalf. As of today, Keepers has about 100,000 transactions and about more than 100 active upkeeps that are running. Now, by outsourcing these tasks, developers can build feature-rich applications that are fully automated and decentralized. Keeper's use cases are many, such as DEX limit order functionality, automated yield harvesting and compounding, rebasing supply tokens, working with dynamic NFTs, DAO automation, and much, much more. And already we have a few customers or users who are using Keepers today. So Grape Finance is doing their kind of token balancing using Keepers capability. Previously, they were spending a lot of time with centralized automation processes. So they're really excited to use Keepers, as well as Krabata, who are using it for a lucky draw on the gaming side. Talking about lucky draws and games of luck, I would like to talk about Chainlink Vrf. So Chainlink Vrf is another service which is now available starting this week on Avalanche. For those of you who don't know what Chainlink Vrf is, it's a random number generation service. It's been in production and live for a while, but we're now bringing it to Avalanche as well, which we're really excited about on the way we have customized it specifically for the Avalanche blockchain, working very closely with the Avalanche developer teams. So Chainlink Vrf provides tamper-proof, unbiased, and cryptographically verifiable source of randomness. Our research team spent a bunch of time looking at various kinds of random number capabilities available today, what were their drawbacks, and then came up with the VRF capability. So at a very, very high level, the way this works is it's a request-response model. Chainlink Vrf uses a block hash as a random seed to generate the random number. Once the random number is generated, it publishes the random number with a cryptographic proof of how the number was generated on-chain. Now, until the cryptographic proof is verified by the VRF coordinator, which almost acts like an abstraction layer, until that proof is verified, the random number is not made available. So it's highly, highly secure. There are lots of use cases for VRF, specifically in the gaming area. So we're really excited to see what developers at Avalanche will do with gaming and NFT, et cetera. So folks can use it for character distribution, matchmaking in player battles, loot boxes, NFT marketplaces, as well as for various governance-based use cases for DAO member onboarding, ordering processes, and whatnot. So VRF, as of today, has had 6.6 million fulfilled requests with about 3,500 different unique addresses making the call. And it's now available, including Avalanche, on 4 different chains. And as you may see on the graph, we have a VRF v1 and a VRF v2 version of the service. So quickly, I wanted to talk about VRF v2, which is actually the latest version of VRF, which is now available on Avalanche. So that's the newer version that we are bringing and making it available. So to bring these services on new chains is not trivial. We have to spend a lot of time in understanding how consensus works on a chain, how block hash works on a chain, and then bring them online. So in this instance, we leverage kind of the fast finality aspect of Avalanche, and we're able to configure the parameters of VRF in such a way that the request response time, developers can design it to have it as low as 1 block confirmation between the request and response. So it allows them, gives them the freedom and the flexibility to leverage the efficient optimizations that are available on Avalanche. So we're really excited to see what folks do with this. Obviously, there are some other benefits of having a single subscription model that we learned from our work with developers thus far. We now have users can easily fund the VRF service by using the subscription app management service. So it makes it less expensive and more scalable. We already have users who are working with VRF and Avalanche, with Trader Joe working on their NFT project with us, as well as Pool Together. So I wanted to kind of leave you all with this kind of thread, which we kind of started the topic with, on what are you going to do with these tools and services? How are you going to build a truth-powered world? We'll be at the booth here if you have any specific questions for the team, and I'll also be hanging out if you have any questions specifically for me. Enjoy the event, and hopefully this was a valuable update. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chirag. Appreciate everything Chainlink does. You guys are fantastic partners, and I know the ecosystem benefits tremendously from it. Up next for our change log, I'd like to introduce Lydia Chiu, Vice President of Business Development at Avalanche, my co-lead of the BD team and partner in crime. Lydia? You need this? Yeah.
Oh yeah, this thing is definitely too tall for me. Hi everyone. As John mentioned, my name is Lydia Chiu. I am Vice President of Business Development at Avalanche. And welcome to Avalanche Changelog. So in today's presentation, we'll review all the growth that has happened on Avalanche in the last 12 months, and we'll talk about what's coming for the next 12. But, let's start with some basics first. What is Avalanche? Avalanche is a layer 1 blockchain network that launched in September 2020. And to be fair, we've accomplished a lot for a brand new protocol that's barely 2 years. Actually, we are not even 2 years old yet. So that said, a couple of basic information. The chain actually is 3 primary chains powered by the Avalanche Consensus. The Consensus is the 3rd breakthrough in 50 years of distributed systems, which means it is the 3rd consensus algorithm to be invented after Classic and Nakamoto. With that said, it allows the chain to scale to potentially millions of validators without compromising on speed. And in terms of speed, what we consider the most important metric is time to finality. That means your transaction becomes irreversible on average in under 1 second on Avalanche. In addition to building a platform that is user-friendly and easy for developers to build on, it's also compatible with the Ethereum virtual machine, as well as other VMs. This has led to adoption by the community, which has built over 450 live applications right now. And a lot of them are built by institutional partners. This has also enabled the digitization of new assets, such as initial litigation offerings. We call them ILOs. What will enable Avalanche to scale as these apps continue to deploy will be subnets. They are custom app-specific blockchains that allow the network to scale infinitely, again, using Avalanche Consensus. So let's go over some of the data, and you can take a look for yourself to see how much the chain has grown. The past year in usage, this is monthly transaction count. As you can see, after mainnet launched, transactions were generally, petering along, but we reached the milestone of breaking 5 million monthly transactions in the second half of 2021. And that only accelerated to break 30 million monthly transactions in the first half of 2022. Now you might ask, how did that happen? So in the second half of 2021, there was the release of the Rush incentive program. We also saw numerous blue chip Ethereum-based DeFi protocols launch. Many of you may know Aave, Curve. And then that spurred the launch of native DeFi protocols to continue growing the ecosystem. And then in first half, so far of 2022, we've seen a lot of pickup from various games. And with the launch of Krabata in November of 21, we definitely see an acceleration in the number of transactions. So now the chain averages approximately 1 million transactions per day, right, and continuing to grow, and it's kind of up and to the right, generous trend happening slowly. Another indication of adoption on chain has been unique contracts deployed. So this is specifically the number of smart contracts that have been deployed on chain. We've seen hockey stick growth recently, and that kind of shows, developers are highly engaged and they're continuing to build and deploy contracts. For daily transaction count, this is where it gets interesting because we're also looking at different subnets. Mentioned before, they're app-specific blockchains. There are currently 2 subnets live in production. One of them is DFK chain, and the other one is Swimmer network. So as you can see, C-chain transactions were kind of flat in the early spring, but then they actually start declining. But that coincides with the launches of DFK chain and Swimmer network. DFK chain here is the red data, and then Swimmer network is the dark purple. So as the C chain transactions actually come down, the overall transactions on the chain have actually gone up. So going forward, we actually have to look at metrics on chain for the primary network as well as all the other subnets as a whole. The other interesting tidbit about transactions going up on chain is that hourly gas used has actually come down dramatically on the C chain. What this means is subnets are scaling Avalanche. They're working as intended. So as you can see here, the C chain gas usage declined as Swimmer network launched. It's primarily driven by Swimmer network. We had the great crab migration of Crabata over to Swimmer, and as that happened, we see total gas usage flatline for the entire network. And since then, gas price on C chain has also been at nice new low levels that we haven't seen in quite a while. So the past year, to sum up, we've seen 3 million plus wallets interact with the C chain. 55 billion of value has crossed the Avalanche bridge. And of the 450 plus apps that have deployed on Avalanche, we're seeing more native and innovative applications deployed. Just calling out a couple here, these are applications with new code. They are native to Avalanche. So if you want to check them out, Platypus, it's a stable swap AMM. Yeti Finance is a cross-asset borrowing protocol. Arrow is an options platform that will launch soon. And Hubble is an on-chain perpetual futures exchange. What spurred all of this activity over the last 12 months? I think a lot of it does have to do with the support that the Avalanche Foundation has put in place to support builders and users alike. In 2021, in November, the Blizzard Fund launched with a mandate to invest in projects. So the fund has been deploying approximately $200 million in capital into the ecosystem. Rush, as mentioned before, it is an incentive program for liquidity mining supporting DeFi protocols. Multiverse, most recently launched. It's another program to support builders who are deploying subnets. Culture Catalyst, I think you guys saw Jason mention that very recently up on this stage. So that is another fund to support NFTs and growing the NFT ecosystem. While all of this has been happening, I am proud to say that the chain has shown very consistent performance and uptime. Time to finality has stayed on average under 1 second. And we are definitely seeing subnets scale. And we can get into this a little bit more on the next slide. Subnets. Going a little bit deeper into DFK and Swimmer network. So DFK chain is launched by DeFi Kingdoms. They're originally a DeFi game on Harmony Protocol. They launched their DFK chain a couple of months ago, definitely the first subnet. And since then, they've already surpassed 15 million transactions on chain. What this did was also provide a proof of concept for developers who are really wondering, what can subnets actually do and can Avalanche actually scale? With that, Swimmer network launched soon after, and since then, they've seen 8 million transactions in 3 weeks. This also reduced fees, again, on mainnet, on C-chain. So something else to think about as other builders launch new subnets or even migrate off of C-chain. And there are dozens more coming. They're on testnet or at least in the spec or being spec'd out. Next year, 2022. I guess that's this year. Definitely the year of subnets, if you haven't gotten that sense from me already. Going through a quick list of projects that have announced that they will be building subnets. Dexalot, it is a decentralized exchange with a central limit order book. They are now on testnet. Castle Crush, this is, if you guys play mobile games, you may have heard of this. It is a free-to-play mobile game, tower defense type style, with already 1 million monthly active users. They've already started their NFT mint. They will be launching their own subnet, and the NFTs will actually open up new forms of gameplay that are enabled by blockchain. There are other games and other metaverses coming as well. Shrapnel, which is a AAA first-person shooter game, they'll be launching their own subnet. as well as Pocket Worlds, which is another mobile developer and expert, if I may say so myself, in building out digital worlds. And some of these have already 2 million plus monthly active users. There are others in the pipeline, institutional subnets, and all of this will support greater interoperability as more tools are built, more people come to build, and we'll have a richer ecosystem over time. So for the rest, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that are not subnet-centric, but things for everyone to follow about and get excited about. Core Wallet, this is more like a full-on operating system to interact with Web3. We'll launch with 7 features to start, and it'll definitely support the Avalanche bridge to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin bridge. Why wouldn't you want to use your Bitcoin in Avalanche DeFi? Get access to some new yields and new returns. And again, if I mentioned we have dozens of subnets, we have dozens of subnets. Institutional partnerships that are coming that we can't disclose quite yet, but you hear about them soon. And all of this creates a better experience for builders, users, network effects, and we'll get closer to realizing the potential of Web3. And with that, I'm going to invite Jodie Gunzberg up to the stage to ask me a couple of questions. Nice.
That was a terrific presentation, Lydia. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, given that you just talked about subnets and 2022 being the year of the Avalanche subnets, we know that there's always some trade-offs with the advancements in the blockchain. So tell me more about what you think the trade-offs are in this case that are made by Avalanche's recently released horizontal scaling solution.
Yeah, it is very firmly in our view that subnets allow Avalanche to scale without any of those hidden trade-offs. And as a point, the blockchain trilemma is that a blockchain cannot be secure, decentralized, and scalable. So with subnets, you get to do all three because Avalanche as a platform is definitely decentralized with over 1,400 validators. And then for security, subnets actually borrow the security of the primary network. So any of the validators on a subnet are a subset of the primary network's validators. And then as far as scalable, we've seen 2 subnets launch in production, powered by the Avalanche Consensus. We're still seeing time to finality in under 1 second. So I think that kind of shows me that we may have solved it.
How do you think that the subnets promote the value of AVAX and improve the network?
Well, I think there are 2 ways to answer this question. One is directly contributing to the value of the network and AVAX, the token. And then 2 is the qualitative. So I'll start with the easier one to answer. So validators need to stake 2,000 AVAX to run a node. And every node participates in block production. And every subnet will need their own set of validators. I think there is definitely a future where new subnets will deploy, and they're going to need validators that are not currently on the primary network. This will directly drive new validators coming to the chain, and they will also need to stake the 2,000 AVAX. There's also the ability for any subnet, instead of using their own gas token, they can use AVAX as a gas token. So that's another consumption and driving value back to AVAX. And then the qualitative answer is, as people see subnets scale and they get to really benefit from the user experience, I think it just creates this virtuous cycle of more people building and more people growing the ecosystem, and then it just keeps building on itself.
During your presentation, I noticed that the fees recently fell on the C chain, on Avalanche's C chain. So why do you think that happened?
That was primarily driven by Cribata, which is the largest play-to-earn game natively launched on Avalanche. They were the highest transaction application on C chain, and that cause gas prices to spike pretty often. They built and launched Swimmer Network and then migrated the entire game to run on Swimmer Network. So that actually cleared up a lot of transactions on the C chain and was able to restore gas usage and gas prices back down to nicer levels. And that is a benefit to the users because it's not a security risk to have them come down to this lower level, and also it provides a better experience. You can't really go for mainstream adoption with huge gas fees because only whales can afford them. And if you're trying to push into the general population where someone just bought some crypto for the first time, they're not going to put in a lot of money, but they're going to come to a chain and they're going to see most of it gets consumed by gas, and they're probably going to not come back. Like, why would you want to pay fees for the first time you're using something, right? So I think lower fees benefits everybody.
Do you think that it's bad for the network that the fees dropped?
No, I don't think so. It's not prohibitively expensive for users to use, but it's definitely, not going to be cheap to try to attack the network. Like, that's not the point here. I think lowering fees to a point where it's affordable for users doesn't necessarily compromise security of the chain. And
are you seeing a decline in the number of active users?
so I think we pulled up the chart of monthly active. There's data on monthly active addresses on C-Chain, and that data has shown that the number of active addresses has come down slightly in the last couple of months, but that's really consistent with the market downturns. I think if anyone's listened to Coinbase earnings or Robinhood earnings, they all cited, bad market conditions are leading to lower transaction volumes and just lower users. So I would point out that, not only is that consistent with market conditions, the decline isn't as steep as it looks because we're also seeing a lot of users and transactions migrate to the subnets that have launched. So we definitely have to look at the entire network as a whole.
So the newer layer ones tend to sacrifice the decentralization for speed, and Avalanche is the fastest blockchain by the transaction time to finality. So how decentralized is it?
Also, the easiest way to answer it, and we're going to pull up the stat of validators on chain, which is there are over 1,400 validators currently participating in consensus. And Avalanche Consensus means that using Avalanche Consensus means that every validator is capable of block production, not some smaller subset of nodes, not some small set of leaders, but every validator. And that has contributed to the highest Nakamoto coefficient of any proof of stake blockchain, anywhere from high 20s to low 30s. So in terms of decentralization, I think the sheer number of validators that we have and the ability of each one to produce blocks indicates that this is a very decentralized blockchain.
All right, well, we're running down to time, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and I think that your comments were really insightful. So let's get on with the rest of the show here.
Yeah, thanks, Jodie.
Thanks, Lydia.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jodie, for joining us. Thank you, Lydia. That was great to see. I think it's exciting for anyone who's been following the network to see that transactions have been staying up, users are still coming on board Avalanche, and with transactions still going up, fees are being managed to go down. As more and more applications find their home on the C-Chain, they build enough adoption, they move off to their own subnets, freeing up block space, lowering the transaction costs on the C-Chain to allow for more and more innovation to happen there. So that's really exciting. I'd like to call up to the stage our next speaker, Vice President of Engineering and the big guy himself, Patrick O'Grady. Patrick, would you come up here for your unlock talk? I was being literal and figurative with the big guy himself. So
let's see, can you hear me all right?
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, I will. Thanks. Let's see. We got a slide deck up here somewhere. Nope. Wait for that to pop up. I brought 2 cups up here. 20 minutes talking, you never know when you're going to need to hydrate here. So I'm not sure who at the CoinDesk side can pull up my deck. There we go. Cool. All right. Nice to meet you all. If I haven't met you before, have met you before, nice to see you again. My name's Patrick. I'm the head of engineering here at Avalanche. Avalanche, if you're not aware, is basically the official maintainer of the Avalanche network client. So the engineering team at Avalanche, we spend all day thinking about how we can make the network more reliable, more faster, and help scale more easily. So I threw this picture up because my talk today is about scaling with subnets, what that means. What is Avalanche, first of all? If, just kind of go in a quick summary. What are subnets? Why would we want subnets? And then talking about, going forward. I think the big part of my talk will also be covering comparative analysis with L2s. So the most common question I get is, what's a subnet? Why would I use it over an L2? What are the trade-offs, upsides, and downsides? And then I'll talk a little bit about the subnet roadmap, as well as some new subnet designs. So really excited for it. Thanks again. So as I mentioned, head of engineering at Avalanche. Although I may write a lot of tweets for different updates and stuff like that, I shamelessly present the work of a team of people much smarter than me. So, I just want to give them an early shout out to all the work they've done. We have an engineering team of about 60 people now, so it's been great to work with them in general. So I think this is an earlier deck, so apologize for that. First off, what is Avalanche? So Avalanche, 3 different things. First off, a consensus mechanism, Avalanche Consensus. Then there's the layer you all know, which is the C chain, typically C chain, X chain, P chain, fast and scalable L1, 1,500 validators with 1-second finality. And then lastly, it's a platform for deploying other blockchains, which we'll call subnets. So you can think of it almost like a hydra of sorts. You have a part that everyone knows, and then it expands widely with all sorts of different approaches. So to get started, for people that maybe not be familiar, we want to start off with consensus, the Avalanche consensus mechanism, because that's the meat, the core of what makes everything we do possible. So first off, classical consensus. This is, where our story starts about 40 years ago, 30 to 40 years ago. This was the first approach, really programmatically, to solving the Byzantine generals problem. Generally, that was used for a lot of systems in the 2000s we're talking about, typically Paxos, if you're familiar with it. It wasn't used on blockchains for much later, but that was its original application. Participant size was limited because of the overhead of messages complexity, and for that reason wasn't really used because network topologies at that time couldn't really support what was needed for a blockchain itself. So we first saw blockchains, as you know, Nakamoto consensus, very robust, no need for precise membership. You solve that problem with proof of work, but slow to finality, lower throughput because you have to be very careful about the size of blocks and making sure that no one has a particular advantage when it comes to mining. And then naturally, proof of work, as many of you know, is very energy intensive. So there's a little sliver here between Nakamoto and Avalanche. What happens there is classical algorithms are revisited, born again in many of the newer protocols that you know about with proof of stake. Turns out classical consensus is very compatible with proof of stake as a mechanism for achieving consensus. And so there was a revisiting of that. It was born again in many of the new protocols that you see today from other popular L1s. And then around that time, in 2019, Team Rocket and then Professor Sir, Gunzberg, as well as Kevin Seknicki and Robert von Rest, excuse me, came up with a new approach based on repeated subsampling. So the big advantage here is that you can take the message complexity down quite a bit, and that allows you to achieve much larger scale, as well as achieve really fast finality, which is what most people care about. So how this works, very quickly, I had a lot of fun drawing these diagrams. The network itself starts as basically I think I'll skip to this slide because it's easier to understand. This QR code, if you scan it, gives you a simulation where you can watch it live, kind of the network happen here. But at its core, Avalanche Consensus is about picking between one of two colors. The whole point of the network is you want to have everyone agree on the same color. It doesn't really matter which one, Just think of the colors as competing transactions. So the whole point of Avalanche is that by picking, sorry, I'll leave that up, picking a small set of the entire population of nodes that are competing, you can get a pretty good idea of the current view of the network when it pertains to which color to do. And it turns out if you repeat this sample process, where let's say you sample 20 of these people and you take the majority and that's your preference, or even a supermajority and that's your preference, if you repeat that some number of times, turns out you typically terminate that process in a logarithmic number of steps. So on mainnet, for example, even with 1,500 validators, a single node will terminate this process in about 15 to 16 steps. That's why we call it Avalanche, is that it very quickly, after a few rounds, will avalanche to one color, the entire network. And so this is a really good example of just the core of what's going on here. So once we have that, we then can build into the network topology what Avalanche actually is, which is a primary network built on top of this consensus mechanism. So what most people have interacted with when they use Avalanche is the C chain, which is the EVM-compatible chain. That's where Trader Joe is, that's where DexSlot is, that's where all the games are. And the P chain as well is something you use for staking. So if you're generating yield on Avalanche by staking, typically you've encountered that. And then you also will create validators and track things on the P chain. So you can think of it also like a registry chain. Excuse me. The reason why we're here today is to talk about, on the far right side, the little subnet things off of the P chain. Because that's why I'm at Avalabs, that's why a lot of my coworkers are here, is because of what you can do with subnets in general. So subnets, because of their nuance, a little new, people generally don't really know about the nuance of them and what you can use them for. So a lot of chatter about what is a subnet, what isn't a subnet, like this is exactly it, this is not it, this is the final solution. So my goal today is to teach you a bit about what that is. So Avalanche is all about the internet of blockchains. So we fundamentally believe that to scale a blockchain to hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, you can't have everything on a single chain. I don't think we're definitely not the only people that think this. And there are a number of strategies to try and basically add more block space to different blockchains to allow them to scale to that large of a population of participants. Our mechanism for that is subnets, which borrows a lot of the ideas from traditional scaling technologies of the last 20 years in different technology startups. The big components of it are you get to choose your security. You can add your own validators to it. In the future, you'll be also able to allow people to stake to it, and then you'll also be able to borrow security from other networks inside of the Avalanche ecosystem. For many of the institutional subnets that are starting up, there's a huge compliance advantage to that because you can decide who can participate. So you can make sure that they follow certain guidelines, they're in certain jurisdictions, they follow certain rules. The thing that most people are excited about right now is the custom execution component. You want to build your own virtual machine. You want to take the EVM and change it a little bit for your use case. It's great for that. All a subnet is a separate binary running on its own that borrows storage, networking, and consensus from Avalanche. Everything else is up to you. And then lastly is privacy. So all connections between the network, nodes on the network are encrypted. So you can optionally choose to only run your network with participants you trust, and no one else can sync it. And then all the data between those nodes is always encrypted, which is really, really exciting for different use cases in the enterprise. So a few months ago, I gave this presentation, and I was like, trust me, subnets are going to be great. It's going to make a huge difference. Just wait. Now we actually have proof of that. So when Krabata, which is known as the Swimmer network now, moved off of the C chain, we saw a 90% reduction in the P99 gas price on the C chain. So many people care about C chain, obviously, which is where a lot of the DeFi happens and a lot of the composability on the chain. And so one big theory and one big approach is if we can move all the applications that don't require this expensive composability onto their own networks, it's better for everybody. They pay a lower gas fee, they have their own custom logic, and then people that require that composability on the main chain don't have to pay for it. So this was a really great and encouraging sign to see. This is subnet number 2 so far on mainnet, so we have a lot of things to go, and I'll touch on that at the end of the application, but during the presentation, but it was really great to see this. So to give you a sense, just what I'm talking about, you know, you got this subnet thing, you got what's going on. Well, you may ask, like, well, how easy is it to create your own? Well, a few days ago, we launched the Avalanche CLI, which is an all-in-one package to launch your own subnet. So you can now, basically in a series of 5 commands, launch your own subnet on your own machine. Now, in the next few months, we'll add the ability to deploy that to the Fuji as well as the mainnet. So I was going to show a video here, but I was like, you know, videos and presentations, something always goes wrong. So I took pictures instead. So basically 3 or 4 steps. I install Avalanche CLI. I pick my virtual machine. So the note here is like, you should think of Avalanche again as a Hydra. You can have any virtual machine that kind of sits on top of it. So if something else becomes popular, you know, we add that. Everyone's on the EVM now, so you know, we have the EVM first. But you could bring in Bitcoin's virtual machine, you could bring in Solana's virtual machine, you could bring in, you know, Cosmos's virtual machine. All of that's compatible with the lower level architecture of the VM interface. You pick your chain ID. This is the EVM example. So, you know, trying to focus on that. You pick basically your fee configuration. This is what matters to most people. So like what's the gas price going to be? What's the throughput I'm going to accept? You decide who gets Genesis allocations of token or if you want to do an airdrop. And then you can determine if you want to add different precompiles. So precompiles are this really cool thing we added to the EVM, not precompiles in general, but stateful precompiles that lets you implement smart contracts as native Golang code, which is very efficient in terms of you know, machine code execution. You really can't beat it. So we have a few up there originally, which the few of them are you can actually mint native tokens, you can restrict who can deploy contracts, you can restrict who can perform transactions, and you can modify those parameters for gas on the fly. So this is just one example of one VM of one subnet of a particular architecture. So we're very excited and, you know, have been engaging the developer community to really expand what you can do with these VMs so that so many more people can just take them off the shelf and use them. And when you're done with the demo, it spits out a little thing you can just drop into MetaMask and start playing. So if you want to read more about this tool or anything like that, that QR code is up there for you to scan. So I'll leave that up there for a few seconds. This will take you right to the Avalanche CLI GitHub page where you can play around with it. So we have 5 or 6 clients right now. And we're really trying to narrow it down to just one that everyone can use for these things. So, so far the attention's been great, and people have been doing this challenge online where it's like, how fast can I deploy a subnet in 30 seconds or something like that. So it's really cool. I'll come back to this later towards the end just to make sure I get to everything. May have been too small, so that's my bad. So the question most people ask is, well, what about L2s? That's what everyone else is using to scale things. Like, why aren't you guys using L2s? Like, what's the difference between L2s and subnets? Long story short, a lot of people are doing very interesting things in the space and have different theories for how things should grow. Now, we all care about the same thing, which is scaling the amount of block space that any particular person can use in some sort of coherent way that we can all achieve higher throughput in a particular ecosystem. Now, sounds simple, but rapidly expands as you start to think about how exactly you'll do that. L2s, you can think of as, in this case, particularly roll-up L2s, are one approach to doing that where you have some virtual machine, and then you checkpoint the security in some root blockchain. And then if something goes wrong, someone can complain, post it on the chain, and then whatever happened on that L2 will be rolled back to the last basically correct checkpoint in the chain. Subnets are a much lower level primitive. So with a subnet, you can have your own security, which is typically how it works today. So like Krabata or DFK would create their own subnet, provide their own validators, and that would have its own security. Now, you could just as easily have a subnet that relies on shared security. So when you build your virtual machine, you could, as part of it, checkpoint your state into the C chain. There's some complications with doing that, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But you could just as easily checkpoint it into the main chain and then not confirm or accept anything on the subnet until basically the resolution window passed on the main network. And then lastly, could you make an L2 with the subnet? Yeah, definitely. Because you can share security, you can also just create a subnet that is based entirely off sequencing onto a root blockchain. Now, the benefit of that is that you could also have like a basically a multi-party sequencer and have like a pre-consensus layer outside of just a single consensus source. Now, if you're, performing fraud proofs and everything like that, it may not be necessary for your use case, but it's all compatible. You should think of subnets more as a framework for creating different things like this rather than a single deployed solution. So what are some differences, first of all? So with a rollup, there's a lot of different things you have to be careful about and think about. So the most important one, which always gets gets me to ask about it, is sorry, one second. Is for a rollup, you have to have some sort of source that can re-execute different state transitions to dispute or to resolve a dispute between who thinks what happened is correct and what is actually correct. Now, what that means tangibly for you is that you need to then implement your virtual machine in a way that another blockchain can compute it arbitrarily. So, for example, in an L2, if there's something that goes wrong that people disagree about, you have to upload state to the root blockchain and then do a bisection protocol to figure out which execution, like basically where the disagreement was on the execution, and then the L1 will then resolve it. So, I can spin up a virtual machine like any one of these subnets in a weekend. I can't implement that in a weekend. And so, it has its pros and cons, but in terms of developer productivity and having to keep a mirror of your virtual machine somewhere else, it gets really complicated. So what people tend to do is they implement virtual machines on top of virtual machines that are very similar because they share a lot of the same code and it's like easy to reason about. But if I implement a generic storage virtual machine that has nothing to do with Solidity, it's going to be really hard to use another blockchain, based on something else. So subnets on their own provide their own sovereignty. They don't need to do this. They can. It improves the developer productivity. You don't have to do this. The second, with an L2, is you have some root blockchain that determines when data is finalized. So subnets are their own networks. So if Avalanche has an issue, it doesn't mean that the subnet will stop. It'll just continue on. And lastly, time to finality. So typically there's a fraud dispute window that typically is a week. Subnet finality, because it's its own chain, at least when not running in rollup mode, achieves finality in about 2 seconds, 500 milliseconds to 2 seconds, which makes a big difference. Now, subnets have trade-offs, especially in sovereign mode. If I run a subnet on a single blockchain, like a single node or single validator, it's pretty easy for me to skew the results to whatever I want. And so subnets are not just a free pass to say, whatever's a subnet is super safe for anyone to use. You got to be really careful still and evaluate it just like you would a new blockchain. Now, that'll change in the next few months as we add some more features to the subnet security mechanism. But initially, there's certainly, you should be careful about using different blockchains just as you would any blockchain with one validator. We're going to put out a blog about this soon and, explain more of these concepts more deeply. I'm running out of time and I want to get to 1 or 2 more topics. So the big thing that we're working on now, a few things, is first of all, Lazarus subnets or community subnets. The idea is that you can deposit a box into an address or smart contract on the primary network, and then those assets are destroyed but born again on any of the subnets that are connected to it. So this will allow you to basically bootstrap your network in a more interesting way. We're also working on blockless subnets, which are subnets that do not have actual blocks or consensus going on. So this Avalanche goes a P2P network, so you can do all sorts of cool experiments with this. And I'm over time now, so I just want to get this last slide. What's important for us on the subnet roadmap is to very clearly communicate this is not like what we have out as subnets is not like the final vision. We have many very important features coming live towards the end of the year. And for some people, subnets will look entirely different in 6 months from now in terms of anyone being able to contribute, cross-subnet bridging, and then new SDKs, particularly a Rust SDK. So thank you for your time. If you're curious and want to learn more about building subnets, we also have a project called Multiverse that is a $300 million incentive program to build subnets on Avalanche. So thank you all.
Thanks, Patrick. I want to call up our final panel today. We're going to have Lydia Chiu come back up, as well as Marcus Jones, Eli Tan, and Jimmy Chu. Eli Tan is the metaverse and gaming reporter at CoinDesk. Marcus is the senior blockchain engineer at Shrapnel. Jimmy is the co-founder and CTO at Pocket World. It's a great project. So excited to have you guys up here for this chat. Lydia?
Thanks for the intro. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? Thanks everyone for coming. We've got a great panel to close off this little section. We've got Marcus from Shrapnel, Lydia, of course, from Avalanche, and then Jimmy from Pocket World. I'll let you guys do brief intros before we get into it.
Yeah, hi. My name is Marcus Jones. I'm senior blockchain engineer at Shrapnel. I've been in crypto since 2015. My background previous to that was systems and network administration. Since about 2017, I worked as a business consultant helping businesses figure out how blockchain fit into their business models.
Hey everyone, I am Vice President of Business Development at Avalanche. In addition to co-leading BizDev with John Nahas here, I also co-lead our Blizzard ecosystem fund. And a lot of what we've been seeing in the last 6 months since launching is gaming. Lots and lots of gaming opportunities. So happy to chat about that.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Su. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Pocket Worlds. And we of Highrise, which is I think we're the first virtual world that launched on mobile back in 2013.
Yeah, so it wasn't mentioned to start the panel, but this is kind of a gaming-focused conversation, right? Just show of hands, how many of you have played a video game? How many of you have played a blockchain game or are a blockchain gamer? Okay, so a good amount. You would think about that, even at Consensus, right? Kind of a small portion of the total gamers have played a blockchain game. A big proposition, right, with blockchain gaming with subnets is kind of onboarding the next, whatever it is, billion users into blockchain gaming from the traditional gaming space. How do you guys kind of see that happening with the companies you're building and kind of the projects you're working on?
I think that the biggest one is just UX. UX in Web3 is still very much in its infancy. And creating a experience identical to that of Web 2 is totally within reach, even with current technology. The ability to use it to log into a game with username and password, have a wallet created for you on the back end, and have no idea that there's even a blockchain behind the game, that it's just a set of new features, new experiences that you're able to interact with in a way that's completely familiar if you've played any Web 2 game.
Yeah, totally agree with that. One of the things I can add here is, speaking of the gaming opportunities we've been seeing at Blizzard and kind of through the lens of Oplab's BizDev is, we're seeing a lot of Web 2 game developers, publishers, studios. They're also looking to make the jump into Web 3. And while they have free-to-play expertise or traditional gaming expertise, where they really need help is understanding what the on-ramp experience is like right now in Web3 and kind of help them mesh that with their existing on-ramping experience and kind of bring that to a point where it's super easy to get started. The biggest friction with crypto and Web3 is setting up your wallet, getting going with any applications you want to use. But games, you can, free-to-play games on your phone, you download it and then you just get going. That's something we need to get as close to as possible.
Yeah, echoing the sentiment here. When we launched Highrise almost 10 years ago, we created this virtual world where the focus was on accessibility, UGC, digital assets and ownership, and then secondary economy. So for us and our users, the ideas and concepts that Web3 brings is already very obvious. And then the challenge is UX. How do we make it such that the experience, so 75% of our user base is female. So how do we make it so that the experience that they have ultimately is the same as what they have? Is they buy Highrise Gold through IAP with their Apple wallets and they're done. That simple.
And in such a competitive environment right now with, subnets, of course, we're talking, there are similar technologies, right? I'm thinking like parachains, a lot of layer 2s, right? What's kind of the value proposition for a subnet to, win out against some of these other technologies, as we just kind of begin to scratch the surface of this ecosystem?
I think it's definitely partially ease of development and control over your own development environment. Even in a roll-up models. It's not practical to really deploy your own roll-up easily right now, as was spoken about previously. And I see Avalanche Subnets and the approach that Ava Labs is taking as blockchain's WordPress moment. Most people don't you look back at the internet and think of it as having existed in its current state for a long time, but it didn't really reach scale until WordPress and Shopify and tools that allowed the everyman to create their own website without having to understand complex interactions. And Avalanche is very much making that approach. And you can even think of the stateful precompile feature of subnets almost like WordPress plugins, where as a developer, I simply say Avalanche create subnet, I select the features I want, and then I've got something I can immediately start building on top of with a friendly API without needing to get too in the weeds in blockchain. And that, I think, will really what brings blockchain to global scale, that kind of approachability. And I think there's historical precedent for that being the case as well.
I think Jimmy, you might
Yeah, sure.
go with this one.
So for us, I think there's 3 reasons why subnets are interesting. One, being that we have now, Highrise has about, I think we're over 20 million users. So we are coming into Web3 with a pretty big community, and we want to be the masters of our own destiny. We simply can't deal with something like Solana being down for a day. I think our user base would just revolt. So the ability to not have to fight other projects for network congestion, not have to worry about downtime, and also control our own scalability. Super interesting for us. I think 2, the ability to set your own native token to pay gas is a really interesting UX benefit. For the mass majority of our users, they don't have to know anything about blockchain. They don't have to buy Ethereum to pay gas. They just have to do the same thing that they've always done, and it'll just work. And then I think the third thing is, for us, because we are, again, coming in with a large community, we can thrive under our own walled garden, in a sense. So for our users in the short term, they may never wander off of our subnet. So we can kind of control and curate that experience perfectly for them, for their onboarding. And then down the road, as they explore the world of blockchain, as they learn more, as they get used to using it, they could venture off and transfer their assets and so on.
Yeah, I would just provide the final kind of comment as our biz dev team at Ava Labs, rather than, obviously we're trying to get as many people to build on subnets as possible, but we're really hoping to bring to partners like Shrapnel and Pocket Worlds is kind of providing that experience to really work with them to make sure that the customizations they're putting on chain and kind of understanding how to implement certain changes to virtual machines, if that's the case, and also just generally providing resources on the biz dev front or on the co-marketing front. These are things that we really value as what we think good partners should do, and that's kind of where we're coming at it from.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about why subnets are so great, right? In the last hour, we've heard it, over and over. I think something that's interesting to think about is just, kind of maybe some of the resistance to these really scalable ecosystems for NFTs or whatever it is, right? From a lot of people in kind of the crypto community. I know in the past week, the big news that the ApeChain or ApeCoin DAO kind of voted down the proposal to migrate off Ethereum, right? I think it was the Ava Labs proposal and then the Immutable X as well. I'd be interested in hearing from you guys, why do you think that there's kind of this resistance to what seems like kind of an obvious solution to somewhat of a simple problem, right? Just scalability.
I think that there is a huge wealth of different approaches to scalability. And anytime there is such a large range of options, it's hard to properly educate yourself on what the options are. And I think that's why many of us attend conferences like this, is to get that knowledge. So I think that moving forward, it's very much education and understanding subnets, the trade-offs thereof, and making intelligent decisions based on your particular use case and needs, rather than this broad, this is the solution for everything. I think that historically in Web3, we've seen very much, this technology is going to be the solution for everyone, and that's not the case in any technological sector. There's always trade-offs and a best case for your business. And creating better educational tools and telegraphing that to the communities is, I think, what gets us past that point.
Yeah, I think the resistance is also, a lot of it is, to your point, education is hard. There isn't a good resource to learn about all of the different technologies and all the shortcomings of each. We kind of just absorb the narratives that are coming at us all the time, but without clear understanding of what is available right now. As a matter of fact, different L2s are at different points of development. A lot of the things that they espouse and advertise are still a little bit further on in the future, and the different L1s that are opportunities for a coin to go to, all of the ape holders are within the Ethereum ecosystem. Like, it's probably not on their radar every day to explore what other L1s are doing. So I think education is definitely a very key point in kind of getting everyone in the Web3 community more aware of what's available.
I think there's also kind of some short-term concerns of moving to L2 in terms of liquidity constraints, adoption. Obviously, if you're thinking a little bit more long-term, they cease to be necessarily an issue. But I think certainly, I think some of the pullback is probably, at least some stems from the fear of these things.
All right, we're running out of time. How about we get the boldest prediction for Web3 or blockchain gaming that's going to happen between now and next year when we're sitting here again? What do you have for us?
We're going to stop KYCing individual wallets and instead KYC decentralized identity and tie multiple wallets to that identity in such a way that it's very portable between different games, and you can have a whole collection of everything you own identified moving seamlessly across platforms rather than this kind of disjointed system that we have right now.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
I think mine is, we're definitely going to see fun-to-play games that exist solely off-chain right now that we're used to seeing, and then we're going to be able to play them and interact with them and find that, hey, most of these games may actually be on-chain at that point. And we're going to reach that user experience goal that we've been talking about. And maybe it is tying in with the digital identity where you have multiple wallets tied with that. That would be one way to really solve kind of this fragmentation of owning your in-game assets, and then also just being able to replicate let me log in and then I'm good to go kind of playing experience. So I'm very excited to see easy to play and really immersive gaming experiences.
So my bold prediction, I think, would be the number of wallets on Ethereum will double in the next year, driven by traditional gamers converting into the world of Web3.
My prediction, not that anybody asked, but I think the most popular game, whether it's mobile game, web game, in the next year is going to be a play-to-earn game somehow. I think whether it's on Subnet or not, I think some play-to-earn game is really going to break through mainstream. People are going to love it. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, I think that's all the time we have. Can we get some applause for our panelists? Thanks everybody for sticking with us. Yeah, I think we're good. Is that?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks again, Jimmy, Lydia, Marcus, and Eli. I appreciate that chat we just had. It was great. Thank you all for coming today. I want to invite you all mid-July. We have our next Avalanche House in Brooklyn in support of the Formula E race. The Avalanche Andretti Formula E team that we support are going to be having an Avalanche House, kind of like a mini Avalanche Summit for those of you that were in Barcelona. I know we have a quick clip that we're going to end with to kind of recap kind of what we've been doing with the community up until this point and what you can look forward to seeing in July. So thank you.
What's up, Avalanche family? We are here at the iconic Temple Half Airfield, here to celebrate blockchain in the context of Formula E. Let's go take a look.
So Avalanche is trying to achieve a number of things, but our mission and our true goal is education.
We really see that Avalanche is becoming the #1 go-to blockchain at the moment.
You will be able to explain what a DAO is, how it works, and why it matters.
This event is amazing. I mean, if you want to be sustainable and like inviting women to the event, because like sustainability also means it should be for everybody, not just for like men.
I would like to encourage women to come into Web3. Don't let fear be a bridge from the things you really want to achieve.
Avalanche's partnership with Andretti Formula E is great because it embodies science, speed, and technology.
Everybody from the Avalanche community is out here to support the team. I'm feeling really excited because this is quite unique.
One of the things that we think about is how can we build accessible apps that can bring the complexities of blockchain and crypto and present that to users in a way that is understandable.
One of the most exciting innovations that we have at Avalanche is the ability to create your own custom subnets. This is really opening up a ton of possibilities for application-specific use cases, and this is where a ton of the true innovation in crypto is happening right now.
It's been a wild ride. I've been in Web3 since like 2018 now. Real people, real teams. I feel here.
Avalanche empowers a future that allows every individual, every company, every developer or creator to have a platform in which they can transfer value and information, create an interconnected global economy that is really led by the people.